what you're meant to enjoy every aspect. No, life doesn't work like that. You're not meant to enjoy every part of it, because you'll be surprised. You might, write something that really resonates with people, and that kind of gets you going. I had a very similar experience. I keep having these similar experiences every single day when it comes to my content creation, where I feel like sometimes I systematize things too much, to the point where for me to get it out of my head and into a video format just takes too long. And sometimes people can get preoccupied with creating too many workflows. LinkedIn content seems to have a much higher shelf life than, say, Twitter.
I went and watched about 20 different videos on career change.
Whoa.
I just saw the consistencies and the threads between them. And there was this big debate about, should you do what you're passionate about or should you do what you're good at?
It's not a simple binary yes or no. Like, you are going to have days
I was going to say 100% yes, but yeah.
Well, you're going to have, no. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Code and Character podcast. I'm Ivan and I'm joined here with Bevan. And today we're going to talk about an interesting topic, which is, should you enjoy the content creation process? Because if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on any type of platform, it's all about social media and creating a personal brand. And they always talk about being consistent with content. Even on YouTube, everyone wants to be a YouTuber. I honestly remember hearing somewhere where a lot of young people, one of their number one goals is to become a full-time YouTuber. But creating content takes a lot of effort. Creating different type of content creates a lot of effort. And Bevan and I thought it would be great to have a chat to actually see, do you enjoy the whole content creation process? So let's start things off by asking Bevan. Bevan, do you enjoy creating content?
Yeah, nah. Yeah.
That's the most Aussie response. Yeah, nah.
I know I had that pre-ready to go. Of course, it's true though. It's yes. It's pretty much the simple answer, yes. But there's always two sides to a coin. I mean, obviously, right now, this aspect of the content creation process, sitting here having a chat with yourself, Ivan, chat to our audience, getting to discuss about things that I care about and that are important to me and being able to share that with other people to help them, 100% enjoy that content creation process. Listening to you, though, talking about things like keeping up a regular, consistent sharing on things like LinkedIn can be hard. Do I enjoy it most of the time? Yes. There are a lot of things that go with this across the board. Like LinkedIn, I find hard to keep a consistent sharing pattern up because there's an emotional weight of it being a more professional. There's on one hand generating random low value status updates on Facebook is pretty, I find that enjoyable because it's easy and you don't think about it. You just talk. But when you're on LinkedIn, there's an aspect of wanting to put on there's a lot of work involved in trying to put on a particular front, right? I think it's a lot easier to be yourself, which actually brings to the aspect of why content creation is enjoyable. This is enjoyable because I get to talk to you and be myself becomes enjoyable at the same time. But there's also a lot of work involved. We started this podcast with a weekly cadence, and we dropped it back to fortnightly.
Yeah.
Editing is a chore, and I enjoy that in the early days when I'm learning how to do it and getting myself around the programs and going, hey, I could do that. It's a new skill I didn't have before. That's enjoyable, but then it starts to become a monotonous thing. So there's two aspects to this. I think everything you follow with passion in your life, there's going to come times where there are chores and it's not the most enjoyable thing. But if you had to weigh up both scales either side, content creation's fun.
Yeah. So. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar frame of mind. I do think this whole concept of, and this comes back to, I think we've talked about a toxic positivity, where what you're meant to enjoy every aspect. No, life doesn't work like that. you're not meant to enjoy every part of it. And the skill really comes down to figuring out what you enjoy and what you can stick to. There are going to be days where you're going to be like, oh man, I need to get another video out. Oh man. And I've gone through a process where I've written where I had to get a tutorial out. Now, mind you, I've kind of adjusted. I haven't done it. I haven't written a tutorial for my site in a very long time, which I kind of miss, because I do enjoy the process of just sitting down and just figuring things out and learning something new. And the best way to learn something new is to write a tutorial about it. You can't learn something new if you want to do a 60-second video. That's one thing I've figured out, because you need to know exactly what you're going to write, what you're going to record. When you're writing a tutorial, you can just outline it and then go off and do your little research, come back, be like, oh, I'll do this, go off, jump around. And there are days that you're not going to enjoy it. And I have personally had points where I've been halfway through a tutorial and I'm like, I'm just not feeling this. And it's just a terrible experience. And I think to myself, am I wasting time? Am I wasting my life just writing this stuff no one's going to care about? But then sometimes you push through, and other times it's kind of like the dip. I know Seth Godin talks about that. He has a book about it where you have to realize sometimes it's just best to just give up. But there's this whole concept of never giving up. And it's like,
Yes.
Yeah. So, but coming to answer your question about like consistency and LinkedIn. So I have been, as you've mentioned about me posting on LinkedIn, in the last few months, like my follow account, now everything isn't about follow accounts. I totally understand, but it's a good metric to follow. Especially if you're
it's the easiest one to measure.
Yes. Especially if what you write about is very niche and not many people give you feedback, even if you're asking for feedback. It's like, give me feedback. What content do you want? Crickets. Like that's what it pretty much is. But I have not been consistent with my posting. Like everyone says, all the gurus, or influencers, whatever you want to call them, about creating content on LinkedIn, always say post 5 to 7 times a week, every single day. You need to be writing content. I don't do that, but yet still my traffic and follow account has pretty much doubled. So one thing I've realized is that try and stick to something, even if it's every second day. Just try and stick to some consistency, because you'll be surprised. You might, write something that really resonates with people, and that kind of gets you going. And it's like, oh, people want this stuff. I didn't know that.
It's an interesting, because even consistency is, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos on content creation over the past year, a lot. And you do find a lot of contradictory advice, even from the same people, right? And I think partly that comes because they're generating content. I've got to get content out. What's a topic? I'll talk on consistency. They'll talk on consistency. Exactly. And then one day they'll talk about the enjoying the process, and they'll change what they mean by consistency in the next video, because there's consistency of keeping your branding consistent, keeping your style consistent, keeping your topic consistent, not necessarily releasing content at the same time all the time, keeping a certain level of quality and keeping it the same so you're not confusing your audience, that sort of thing. And so what do you mean by consistency when they speak about it? It's not always clear. I think there's a lot of mismatched information up there. And I personally just think after a while, you just kind of got to do what feels right and what works for you. And the consistency is more about just don't give up. I seem to take it that way. What was I going to get at? Just recently, I just on my own channel, speaking to that, the quality versus quantity. That's what I'm trying to get to. That's a discussion too. Is it better to get out? If you're trying to aim to get, like you said, 3 posts a day. If they're 3 terrible posts, I guess there is value to it, because one of them might happen to be good and take off. But then if someone comes and reads the rest of your profile and it's all not very good, especially like a YouTube channel,
Yeah.
put out one good video and they go, I'll check out the channel, and it's just lots of crap, then you're not likely to get a subscriber as much, and they're not going to come back to your channel because that's not what they were looking for, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's on my channel. I just recently did a 30-day speak to the camera challenge. So I was talking to the camera for 5-10 minutes every single day. And at first I was like, you know what, I'll just to get over it, I'm not going to post it. This is just an exercise for me. About 3 days in there, I'm like, what am I doing? Why don't I just post it up?
Yeah.
And then, so that became a consistent thing that I was posting every day. A couple of days I backlog it and release 3 or 4 at a time. But the interesting thing I got from that was, at a certain point, I suddenly stumbled on a thumbnail template that worked for me. Like, I generated a thumbnail mock-up in ideogram.com, AI image generator, and I'm like, that's great. And I recreated the background in Inkscape, and I've been using that same background and color and style throughout the thumbnails. So it's really fascinating to see that by that consistency, even though I don't even know if my videos are that much quality. Some people have watched them, got a few likes. There's not a lot of dislikes. Nobody said they're bad. I'm not the right person to ask. I just spoke to a camera for 10 minutes and uploaded it, right? But there was value coming from that process of just getting it out there and getting over the perfectionism of it.
Yes.
Which there's a lot of self-learning in that, because I've gone through that process and really been hit in the face by how much of a perfectionist I am. But then there's also the counterpoint of, but I did do it and I did get it out there, and they're not perfect. So well done. Maybe I'm being too harsh on myself. But that whole process, it's a learning journey. That's been quite enjoyable, although it was a chore at times. Some of the videos are put up. I didn't record them until 12:30 at night. People in the house asleep. I couldn't like it, and it was hard because I just put it off all day. So although as much one of those things, you put it off all day and then you put the camera on and you happily talk for like 15 minutes and come out feeling great. Like, that's an old story I heard years ago about, even when I was a kid, you go to play soccer on a Wednesday night and it's cold and you don't want to go, but once you're there, you love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar experience. I keep having these similar experiences every single day when it comes to my content creation, where I feel like sometimes I systematize things too much, to the point where for me to get it out of my head and into a video format just takes too long. And sometimes people can get preoccupied with creating too many workflows. Sometimes you just need to get it out there and get it out quickly. And that's why I do really like your 30-day challenge. I would like to think of, again, I don't want to procrastinate, but let me now create a list and brainstorm all of these ways I can know. But, I think creating just creating some type of system that can be quick and easy, because, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. So I do my live streams about a certain topic, okay? And I'm just trying to not mention the topic because we're trying to avoid talking about what we normally talk about. And one thing I've been trying to do is I've been trying to cut up these longer live streams into shorter content, which I can then post out, okay? So then straight away, it's like, all right, I've got this 16:9. Now I'm going to get into the nitty gritty. And this is the stuff that I think about. It's like, okay, I've got a 16:9, so landscape live stream. I've recorded that at 4K locally, and I've got a YouTube version because it goes directly on there. Now, I was procrastinating where I was like, okay, where do I edit that large 4K version? If I put it in Camtasia, which is something I use because it's simple to zoom in and out, I can zoom. It's much easier to zoom in, but you have little annoying things like you can't have multiple timelines. It just makes it difficult to maintain. Then I was like, well, let me put it in Premiere Pro, but Premiere Pro makes it hard to zoom in, but you can have multiple timelines and projects, because then I want to do it 9:16 so I can put it on TikTok. And then at that point, I kind of give up. And it's like, I've got now 17 live streams that I want to edit down, and I've done possibly one, because I'm always thinking, oh, well, if I do this, but then the 9:16, so the portrait version needs to have captions. I can only do that in Premiere Pro. I can't do that in and then to the point, I was like thinking to myself, Ivan, just, oh man, stop this. Get it out. Like today, I edited three of those videos, and I was like, "Oh, should I be zooming into certain parts?" It's like, no. The whole point is to just get this out, and this comes down to, I think, the 80-20 rule. I seriously think now, 80% of my results come from 20% of the work that I put in, and it's just finding that 20%, that most important 20%. For me right now, it is doing live streams and posting content onto LinkedIn. Because one funny thing I've noticed with LinkedIn is that LinkedIn content seems to have a much higher shelf life than, say, Twitter. Okay, Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Okay, I don't know if maybe because it was recently sold and a lot of people have disbanded from it, but a post goes onto LinkedIn. On Twitter, and also I'll say Instagram as well, and you get a few likes and you're done. Where I noticed that with LinkedIn, it kind of compounds over time, which is very interesting. I never thought of that. Like, I've always understood that people go to YouTube to search for things. You actually have your videos appear in search results. So it does have a consistency, and that's why you want to put that effort in there. But LinkedIn seems to, I'm surprised. But I don't know if people are searching for things, but I have got like I can get people liking posts from 3 weeks ago that are consistently
I
getting.
think LinkedIn's its own beast though, where you've got a bit of a clique happening. On Twitter, you're sort of connected with all sorts of varied people. The same probably with Instagram. Whereas once you're on LinkedIn, we'd have the same pool of people who are interested in you've already got an interested audience almost already, just from years of
maybe
sharing connections. Because you go to like conferences and you share with I think your niche is just sort of that I'm spitballing, I'm guessing, but I think that's probably why LinkedIn's doing that for you. But you're already hitting the right audience off the bat.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, today I reposted an older post, an older video that I posted probably December.
Feel about that? I know you get resistance.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, cool.
So I've got a spreadsheet.
Don't want to feel like you're spamming, right? Because it's perfectly legit.
No, because it's literally months ago.
Yeah.
And I've seen people talk about statistics saying that 80% of your followers don't even see your content. So I don't spam weekly. So this one was probably from October. I've got a spreadsheet where I've done fancy formulas where you again procrastinating.
So well organized.
And so I do like to track. And again, this is just my head, and maybe I am too much of a perfectionist. I like to know exactly if a landscape or portrait video has been posted onto my LinkedIn, because then I feel that I can easily repurpose the same content, because sometimes I create a portrait and a landscape version.
Come on, mate,
get with the
content creators and create a Notion workflow and sell your templates.
Oh, somebody's already done that. There's one called, but no, man, I'm always changing my Notion template.
Oh, you actually do use Notion? I've never used Notion.
Yeah, I use Notion, but I also then use Google Sheets for some things, and it's just an absolute mess. Spreadsheets are the best, but for some things. But there's one thing, and if anyone can help me out with this, I want to write rich content in Google Sheets. I want to have where I can click on a cell and it pretty much opens up
in a cell.
a Google Docs. You can do semi things like that with notes or just by expanding the cell. But that's one thing that's really missing in Google Sheets.
Blobs in cells.
Blobs and cells. But I mean, there's all of that stuff. But
yeah.
That's one thing I've kind of noticed. But also when it comes to repurposing content, I do change the text and also the thumbnail as well. And I do look at, it's like, okay, this was posted December last year. No one's going to remember that. Even if some people do, people will repurpose.
Yep. How much effort do you, asking you lots of questions, how much
Yeah, go
effort
for
do
it.
you put into like you designing your thumbnail and coming up with a clickable title and that? Because that's me having studied the YouTube game. It's all like get your thumbnail and your title done first. And if your thumbnail and
Yeah.
title's no good, don't even bother making the content, no matter what your content's about. Because if you can't get a decent clickable thumbnail and title from it, there's no point in making it because no one's ever going to see it, which is an interesting take.
It is. It is.
In
And
LinkedIn, I imagine LinkedIn's very much the same, except you've probably got a bit more, because you get more of a description. I don't know, but you still got to stop the scroll in the same fashion, right?
yeah, you do. I generally go with topic first. If it's something I find interesting, that's how I do it. Maybe I should do it. Maybe
So
I
that's the
should.
topic. That's very
But
close to the topic of what we're talking about anyway. I mean,
yeah,
that's the counter to all of this, all that work, all that effort, all these rules and
it
systems.
has to be an interesting thing
If you're
to
not,
do.
yeah, because it becomes a chore sometimes. So if you're
Yeah.
not enjoying what you're making content about, then you're
Mm,
going to burn out. I've heard that
absolutely.
story over and over.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I want to probably do later tonight after we finish recording, because I've got my nice camera set up, because I normally don't have it set up. So when I do have everything set up and the mic's out, I always just quickly record a few things. But on Thursday when I did my live stream, I did a section where I mentioned I explained how to do something in a certain CMS, and now I think about it. Well, and now when I think about the 10 minutes that I covered a certain part, I'm like, well, that would actually be a nice little short form video. So I
You're
don't know
building
what
it into
thumbnails.
your long form there. You actually got bits in your live stream where you sort of speak deliberately with an intention that you'll turn that into a short form later.
Well, the goal
It's
is
good forethought.
always the goal would be to cut up that live stream already, but sometimes I just haven't got to that. So I can, I have actually seen parts that people have asked questions about in the live stream, and I'm like, oh, I can actually turn that into a short video that goes for 60 seconds, and that's it. And it's pretty quick. So I would like to get to a point where I can cut up those videos if I have time. I don't know. Today I was even thinking, man, I'll just go on Upwork and try and find a freelancer. If I can just and trust me, yes, I do
I
know
tell you what,
AI is
Opus
out
Clip.
there,
I've used
but
Opus Clip
Opus
recently.
Clip isn't going to cut because I do mouse and screenshots and I want certain things. I
True.
literally I will pay somebody where I give them a Premiere Pro project and I say, here it is, here are the time codes. You give me your definition of done is this, this, and this. I don't want to spend time in Opus.
Yeah,
And
right.
I'm thinking
Oh,
maybe I'll try that out and see what I get back. Because if somebody can just give me a folder in Google Drive with it all processed, zoomed in,
that's the
highlighted
dream.
thing, why not?
When we're sitting there, we've got this in our notes, right? I was talking to you earlier about Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yes.
Talking about what's the quote I got. Well, I won't say it's the quote. I'm gonna come and say I was chatting to ChatGPT today and told it
Well, I
to
was
act
going to
as if
say,
it's
you
Gary,
actually own that quote.
and it spoke. It's great when it spoke in his language. But what was that? What he had to say? Loving what you do is crucial, but don't romanticize the process to the point where you can't make the hard decisions about efficiency and effectiveness, which sounds just like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hustle on the parts you love, streamgate and delegate the parts you don't, which is exactly what you're speaking about, right? That sitting down and making the short form content, you don't enjoy it, you find it a challenge.
Yeah.
Go to Upwork, get somebody to do it for you, get it out, and then get back onto the bit you love, which is making tutorials, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny. I don't enjoy making tutorials at all, which I think is because of my perfectionism. I'm just like, I need to cover every single base and it's just too hard and it get over it. So yeah, I think there's something to be said about streamlining those processes, but also one of my favorite phrases in life is you can't steer a parked car.
Well, that's it.
Right. So that's a very much about a perfectionism. You just got to get moving. I mean, I made a video on, I recently launched one. Did I mention it last week? just created a character called Alex that was creating content, had no idea what he was doing. I kind of explained that story about him just getting moving and making content. And it's Alex, it's not me, I swear. But but that's my approach to what I'm doing at the moment. I'm just in here going, I've not really done this before. I'm learning as I go. And I'm learning so much. I'm able to sit here and speak to you with really deep insight into how the processes work, what the challenges are, how to pivot, which I couldn't do if I hadn't just got started and just literally gone and made bad content. Right? There's so many fears around that. What about reputation? If I make bad content, won't people see that and then think that I don't know what I'm talking about? But it's just such a drop in the bucket that
Exactly.
and that's, if you look at YouTube, I do it a lot with some of the YouTubers you speak to. You just go to their video list, which is, you can't do this on like LinkedIn so easy, but sort videos in oldest first, and you just straight away and you just go, look at this.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them, like, they go, look at my old videos, I was terrible. You go look at their old videos, you go, that's not bad. But some of them are absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And you see it develop. I think a lot of people have taken down some of their worst videos, which
I'm
because
sure,
I look at some of mine and go, and I don't know if, in the future when I've actually mastered this game, do I want that stuff up there? And I kind of like, I think I do. But you do have to just get moving and enjoy it. That's where it comes back to, enjoy the process. And just get in there and do what you see. Interesting. We talk about passion. We mentioned that before. I made a video recently about, because I'm essentially career transitioning a bit myself. I was working full-time web development. Now I'm working with you doing this, creating my own channel, changing jobs, changing careers, midlife. It's late to do it. And I thought, well, why don't I just document that as part of my journey? And so I created a video I went and watched about 20 different videos on career change. And just saw the consistencies and the threads between them. And there was this big debate about, should you do what you're passionate about or should you do what you're good at? And basically what it came down to. But the whole time I was watching it, I just don't like this, because I saw people interpret passion differently. I saw one guy reference, he said, look, we've done a study where it was a Canadian study. We interviewed 500 people. I'm like, it's 500 students. It's not a huge, big, what do you call that, set of data, but it's 500 students. And they go, when we asked them what they were passionate about, they said music, hockey, dancing. And then we looked at the number of jobs available in hockey, and it's like 0.01%. So there's a mismatch. So obviously you can't do what you're passionate about. And straight away, I'm just going, if you go and ask some kid what he's passionate about, and he says hockey or music or dancing, I don't think that's the right answer. There was a word for it, a desire mismatch, right? Because people aren't trained in, that's a classic quote about, I don't know if it's Mark Twain, I'm probably misappropriating that quote. However, the quote of, I can teach anybody to get what they want. The problem is finding somebody that knows what they want. Right. And I think that's a big aspect of that. So this discussion of, should you do what you're passionate about? I find sometimes passion's the wrong word. It's like more like, what would you love to create? What life do you want to live? Work towards that. And now there's going to be chores that you need to do on the path that you might not love in the moment. But if you've got your focus on actually creating what you love, then you're going to go through those, and it's, and there's going to be moments of enjoyment where it's effortless and it just goes for you, I think. And that's what just gets started, right? I think there's a lot to this. I'm making a lot of changes in my life. I've just taken on a gig, as I told you about, working as a trivia host. I got my first gig tomorrow. I did an interview for that. I was up against a couple of other people. He goes, you got the job. I'm like, this is, I didn't see myself doing this a few years ago. It was, so making those changes. And that's probably because I'm really dedicated to what I'm doing at the moment. I'm like, hey, look, I can't take on a full-time job because it interferes too much with creating the life I love. I've had to make that really huge sacrifice and go and take other work that pays for this, because that's, I found in the corporate world, working full-time, I was just absolutely exhausted at the end of the day. I had no oomph left. And content creation, since that's our topic, really takes it out of you. I find it's a hell of a lot of, as fun as it is, well, it's really enjoyable, and it's a lot of self-expression, and it's an art form. but it's so emotionally draining as well, because you're putting yourself on the line. All the decision making, you spoke to that a bit about, do I edit it in this, do I edit it in that, do I make the short form here, do I do the edit, the decision, just making decisions is really, really hard.
Yeah.
There's a story by what's his name, Alan, I can't think of his name. Why can't I think of his name? But it tells a story about a guy. There's a man, he's a farmer, and he hires this man who, he comes to work on the farm, and he says, I need you to go down the paddock and fix the fence. And the guy goes down there, and about an hour later, he's come back and he's fixed not just that fence, he's tidied up all the others, and he's got everything. It's all perfectly smick and span. He's like, all right, there's a few windows on the side of the house. I need you to fix those. He just goes and does it. The tractor's down, and he just goes and does it. And he goes, this guy's amazing, right? He's so efficient. He works so well. He works so fast. He's so enthusiastic. What else can I find for him to do? And he says, like, I've got a job for you. And he says, down in the basement, I've got a huge pile of potatoes that have been sitting there, and I need you to sort them. I need you to sort, like, the ones that are good for chips and the big ones that are good for boiling, and the dirty ones that need to go to the food farm. So the guy's down there, and about an hour and a half later, he comes back and he says, I quit. I resign. And he goes, what's wrong? Why? Like, that's you. Like, I asked you to do all these hard jobs, and you loved them, and you got them done so easy. He goes, fixing a fence. I knew what the fence had to look. I just fixed it. Fixing the windows. I just went up. I fixed the windows. Fixing the tractor. The tractor goes. But he says, those potatoes, that was just decision after decision after decision. Right. And having heard that story, I've noticed that in my life, there's a lot of times when just decision making is hard work. Right. And that's why sometimes you've got to turn that off and just get up, like the umming and ahhing for ages. The hesitation will wear you down and you'll burn out. Sometimes you just got to, and that's, I think it ties in with perfectionism too, right? Of course, be willing to get it wrong.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's
absolutely,
which is one of the things I love about doing this content creation process, because it's very much also working for yourself. Sure, I've got an audience to speak to, sure, but there's no one to reprimand me, right? It's kind of, if I get it wrong, I got it wrong. It's not perfect to get it out there, and that makes it so much better, such an enjoyable process, because you can learn from it. So
that's it. Absolutely. All right, so where are we up to? I think we've gone all over.
I think we've covered a few of these things. We've talked about, well, we've got some notes here we're going through.
Yes.
The role of passion in content creation, I spoke to that. We spoke to challenge versus enjoyment. We absolutely covered early on.
Absolutely.
We defined what enjoyment was. Now, if we come down here, what have we got? So,
well, practical tips, sustainable practices. I think just pick one platform.
That a bit.
Yeah, and make it easy to write. No, make it easy to produce content. Don't in the beginning. You don't need a fancy Notion workflow unless you want to do it.
Well,
but don't spend too much time developing the Notion workflow, and don't do what I do and be like, well, I'm not going to write content until I've got a Notion workflow in place.
Yeah, I've had to deal with that just today, right? Because I launched a video last week. I got a new computer. I won't go into the saga of getting that set up, but that's all going now. And now it's like, okay, now I've got to write another video, and I'm not prepared. Like, I've got lots of ideas, but I'm not sure about them. So I've had to sit down today, and I've sat down with ChatGPT and got myself a mastermind group of various different people, advisors to speak to. And they gave all the same information, like streamline it, make templates, make sure your branding's consistent, do this. And even to like this, artificial group of advisors. I'm like, but I've got to get a video out. So it's all great advice, but I had to, and I can't keep it all in my mind. It had to be, okay, but I need to act now. And there's something to that. I saw, what's his name? The Ali Abdal. Alan Watts is the guy I was speaking about before, who I got that potato story from. Alan Watts. But if you see Ali Abdal, he's the productivity guru.
Yeah.
And I saw him talking about that same thing, about the amount of effort you put into something. Like there's a sweet spot. Like you see the curve, one of those curves that goes like that.
That's it.
Right? And you get to or is it more like this? And so you put all the effort and your quality goes up, and then you put the same effort and the amount of quality you get out of it starts going down.
Yeah.
And that's your 80-20 rule, like the first 20%.
Yeah.
And finding that sweet spot, I think, is a challenge, But it's funny because when I speak to myself saying I find myself to be a perfectionist, I also think some of my work's probably really low quality too, because I get so overwhelmed by my perfectionism that I just go blah. And the end result of being a perfectionism is not the best content, but it slowly improves. And I think that's the same name of the game in a lot of things. That was Anthony Robbins calls it. Remember listening to him came up with word, can't I? Consistent and never, was it? Consistent and something improvement. Can't remember what the acronym was, but because he's talking about when you've got a complex concept, just break it down into a single word, then you can hold the entire concept in one little nugget. That's an interesting idea. I just can't remember what his acronym stood for because I don't like acronyms. We speak about it.
Yeah.
It must be never ending, constant and never ending improvement. That must be what it stood for. I mean, that's something you hear all the time, but it's really, I think all of that comes into place though. I'm very much of the philosophy of you can try and get all your ducks in a row, or just aim at where you want to go, and all the ducks, rather than wait for your ducks to get in a row, throw the bread out and they'll line up. Like it's a terrible analogy, but
no, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I
totally bad analogy,
agree.
but the principle's there.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've been trying to do, where instead of having a system of creating, having an idea, placing it somewhere, then you need to do a workflow. And then sometimes I get caught up in my own systems, and it's like, this is too convoluted. If I want to do a video about a certain topic, in my Notion setup, I've got a project, because sometimes I thought, well, I'll have multiple videos under one project. So then I need to create a project. Then I need to go into Google Drive and create that folder. Then I need to create for each project, and I need to then create an asset, which could be either video tutorial or like a short video. Then when that happens, I need to then create, like, there's all these manual processes.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I could automate it, and I've been thinking about just doing it and automating and pressing a button and just builds it all, which you can do with like Zapier or Make or something like that.
Then you're often biting off more than you can chew in one go anyway, right?
Exactly.
But always with, hey, look, what is it? I spent a week automating this manual task I could have done in 5 minutes, like that.
Well, that's it. But the annoying thing is that every single time I do something, I'm always searching through so many folders. And just the idea of having to look through the folders for these things is just annoying and kind of like gets in the way. So like now I've been thinking, okay, if I want to get a video out today, I want to record it and get it out. What is the quickest way of doing it? Just focus on that. Just get it out.
Yeah, focus on the end result and everything else.
Focus on the end result.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing with the live streams. No matter what, Thursday, I go. And so, it can be a bit stressful 2 days beforehand when I haven't thought of a topic and I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And I need to get that event created. I need to create the thumbnail and things like that.
Yeah.
But then Thursday, it's go live.
Well, we've done this with, what are we up on, episode 12 now?
Yeah.
We've done that with this podcast. There's been times where we're just like, of course, I think we've had some really good topics, and there's other weeks where it's like, well, and both of us have actually acknowledged to each other, they're not all going to be the best episode in the world. Let's just get together and record an episode. And they've all turned out pretty good. When you're there and ahhing and this, I like how we work together, though. We don't overthink it too much. You and I get together, what are we going to talk about? We one of these, pick one, we go.
Yeah.
And I think it works really well for us in this sense. Still talking about that perfectionism, though, and just getting it done. I mean, it does relate back to, I'm sure you've experienced the same in web development. Like I suffer from a bit of a fear sometimes of lock-in. Like if I don't get it right now, if I don't have all my stuff organized, then later on when I do organize it, I'm going to want to get access to stuff, but I've already, so it comes especially from web development. Like if the system's built wrong, then the system becomes very complex very quickly, and then you can't go back and change if you make a mistake at the beginning, you're kind of locked into it. I don't think that happens so much with the content process, but it's still a bit of a fear. Like that's if I just go and knock out a video now, then what about when I get my have I got it wrong? Have I made a mistake? Have I because if I've stored it in these folders and I haven't recorded the subtitles and I didn't name it properly, how am I going to find it later? So then you sit there and you try and name them all properly, and you get caught in this analysis paralysis. And that's these episodes from this podcast. I've because they start filling up the hard drive on my main machine. I've got a backup machine using KDN Live. I haven't got the experience to know when I move the video editing project file, then I've used some videos that are from some of the other videos and other projects. And then if I move them, and then those projects are now on a different drive, does it? And I just can't, I haven't got time to sit here for 4 hours and go through every single project and make sure copy them all over and back them up. And if they're gone, they're gone. Like I've kind of had to accept that. Like I've edited it, I've produced it, I've rendered it, it's up on YouTube. If I lose the source files, then that's, and I could probably, that's in an emergency, I could rebuild them, but it's like, even, do we need those backups? Like, do I really want to spend hours and days trying to sort out my backup strategy for these episodes when once they've rendered, what's the chance of ever having to go back to the source files in the first place anyway?
Yeah.
How much value is there really in them? As a web developer, I've been taught so much about backup, but then there's also a case of how much energy you're expending on backups on low value stuff. Just delete it. And I think that's this content creation thing. It's like I want to document everything for posterity. That's when I've mentioned to you about doing a AI overwhelm topic. That's one of the things I find with ChatGPT. You'll sit there and talk to it for an hour, and then you've got 100 pages of output, and there's some gems of information in there, and it's like, well, it's kind of, and it's hard to search on, and there's so much information, and it's hard to let it go. And I've thought of so many different ways. How can I organize this? How can I structure it? Should I index it in a search thing? You know what? And I probably could copy and paste, but it's just trying to keep up with that. It's just such an overwhelming amount of information that you kind of just got to take what you've got with you. It reminds me speaking to a friend once when she was working at a job for a while and she'd been working on various projects. She was changing roles, and she's like, same situation. She's got all this stuff. How do I organize it? What if I don't take it with me? I'm going to lose that work. And it's kind of, you kind of just got to cut your losses sometimes. I think some people seem to be good at this stuff, just naturally really well organized. I'm not. Be who you are. Like, just embrace it. Because that's even so easy to play the comparison game of, I've been watching Vanessa Lau on YouTube a lot. She's a fascinating one to go and watch because she just built her YouTube thing up. She left a corporate job and went and started selling coffees in a cafe as she built up her YouTube thing, made a multi-million-dollar business. And then a year ago, she disappeared because she went on sabbatical for a year. And now she's came back and she's got a really, she's being very vulnerable, and you can tell she doesn't know what she burnt out, right? She wasn't happy and she's trying to find her way back. But she's even now making videos where she's showing her process, and it's all organized. She's got a Notion templates. It's all this, it's all that. And I guarantee you when she first started, she wasn't, right? I say I guarantee you, but that's my opinion. I don't think she's been, because she will do, and her and a lot of other people will teach videos on, here, this is my system, this is my process. I've got this organized. I've got it organized this way. I've got all my B-roll in here. I've got all my photos over there. I've got Wednesdays when I do this and Tuesdays when I do that. I've got all this content lined up. And you go, but I bet you for a good chunk of the start of that career, you didn't have that, right? Yeah. So you got to be careful when you're learning from the gurus, that the gurus are speaking from the top of the mountain, and the work you do at the top of the mountain is very different to the work you do at the bottom. And I think you tend to pick that up if you watch enough. Like, that's every once in a while, you'll see one of the content creation experts sort of let slip and go, like, when you're just starting, right? Just make content, because all that advice about getting your thumbnail right and getting your title right. If you haven't made a video yet, then how do you even know what a good thumbnail and a good title looks like?
Yeah, that's
And you hear
it.
that advice a lot. Just make 100 pieces of content. Make 100. And I think that's some of the best advice. And that's kind of my advice about advice. And when people say take advice with a grain of salt, I think that's why, because it's easy to forget how hard things were when you're a beginner. Probably get it with web development. Like there's so much about web development that's just part of who I am. I speak the language so fluently that like when you speak English, I don't know the rules of English. I just speak it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing that happens when you're trying to learn content creation off a fluent content creator. They don't necessarily know how to communicate the nuances that a newbie needs to know. So trust yourself is what I'm getting at a bit. And they're right. Just get out there and do it. So talking about, is it enjoyable? Yeah, that's experiment. Enjoy the process. That's what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
I'm enjoying it tonight. I mean, I've had, like today, I was sitting in front of my computer just brainstorming most of the day and learning patience. It's like I want to get a video out, but I've also got to learn to not rush that process as well. Like this balancing act between I've got to get content out, but I can't just get content out. Like that's because that's the last video I did. I did take the time to do the thumbnail and the heading first, and it probably took me a couple of days. Whereas when you see someone go on their process, I'll do the thumbnail first and make sure most of my effort goes into that. So I booked out an hour. An hour. It took me 2 days, right? Because that's new and you just get better at it. So that's slow and steady building up. That's an old analogy about the steam train. When you've got a steam train, it takes so much energy to get that thing moving a little bit at a time. But then once it's moving, try and stop it, right? It takes just as much energy to stop it again. So
absolutely. So
comments and questions.
Comments and questions. Well, no one's giving us comments. Please add questions.
Add questions.
Yes.
And we'll call you out. We know who you are.
Well, should you enjoy the content creation process? Maybe. Like, it's not a simple binary yes or no. Like, you are going to have days
I was going to say 100% yes, but yeah.
Well, you're going to have, you're going to have days where it feels like a slog.
Yes.
And you're trying to draw blood out of a stone, and other days it's going to flow. And I do think just figure out, it comes down to also figuring out what type of content you like to produce. Is it video? Is it audio? Is it short form video? Is it short posts?
Yeah.
Is it,
and what are you doing it for? That's the old classic.
and what you're doing it for as well. That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
When you're trying to push content out, it's like, okay, yes. I heard a great analogy. So I've probably mentioned this before, but I do follow 2 guys that run the Ship 30 for 30, and the whole thing is about just creating these atomic essays and things like that. And they essentially say every time they create a piece of content, it's like a lottery, that you want to try out different types of content because you don't know how it's going to perform, and you might stumble across something. It's like, well, actually, this works pretty well.
I'd say it's a lottery that compounds every time you enter the lottery. There's more chance of winning than there was the previous entry. Yeah.
Like, you need to be in it, and you need to win it, as they say. Also, be consistent and just create that large pool of content, and then see over time what works.
Yeah, I think that's why I talk about that you can't steer a parked car.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. That's my channel is a bit of a hodgepodge of various different things as I produce content, learn momentum, learn what I enjoy, what I don't enjoy, learn what the audience is responding to, learn what the algorithm's responding to, right? And all sorts of insights I couldn't have if I didn't start. So even when I started, it's like, I don't know exactly what I want my channel to be about. And there's so much advice about niche down, niche down, niche down. I don't know. But as time moves forward, that's that I'm getting more and more clarity all the time about what it is I'm doing and what I'm building. Of course, I just started, right? And if I'd listened to that advice, is you've got to have a niche, I never would have started. I just had to start and go, I'm making some random video. Like, just what have
Exactly.
I got? It's not the best
Exactly.
idea in the world. I've got an idea. I'm making a video. It's
Yeah,
go.
absolutely. Absolutely. And like, I know with myself, I've been wanting to do videos about other things, not just web stuff. And I do
Not
have,
just the D word,
yeah,
which we've done so good.
I know, we haven't even mentioned it.
Yeah, if we don't mention it at all, I don't need to listen to the whole podcast to count them all.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Don't say it. But things like doing videos on all the SaaS applications that I use, doing short form content like that. There's so many little tricks I know about using a Mac and Mac OS that I want to put somewhere, but it's not. But I've niched down too much in one part. But then under my personal brand, I want to kind of try out and try different things
That's a
and just
challenge
see
I've
how it
got.
goes.
That's a challenge I've got at the
Mm.
moment, is to split ideas and see overthinking and questioning, because that's my channel's very much more on some of the stuff I spoke about today, like some of the personal development stuff about focus and
Yeah.
all this stuff about just getting in and doing it. That's what I really love to talk about. Yeah, I've got all this tech background, and I did a live stream the other day as I was learning. I sat down with the KDE manual and went through the quick start on a live stream. I want to do that again because it kept me so focused,
Yeah.
but it doesn't align with the rest of my channel so much. And so that's where I'm working. Should I make a separate channel? Should I make one? And then, you know what? Okay, you know what? The niche is Bevan talks about life and
Yeah.
how to change a career and how to start anew and how to bring your old skills to fore. Who cares if I've got a video on learning KDE live? And like, if people come and join me, start interacting, we'll start having a conversation. Like, when they're not getting any feedback, it's just like, and then this is how you, and then what's the next step? You do this, and it's not. But I think there's something. Same thing. You can't. Like, I've got to be willing to make mistakes. So I'm probably talking myself into it at the moment. Is my channel is just a bit of a variety thing. That's what I was trying to allude to before, about what if you lock yourself in and you make a mistake early, and then what if I start putting various content on my channel that I should have put on 2 channels, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of a point of no return. Once I've put it up all on one channel, it's very, very difficult to pivot and split it into 2 channels again and start another one. Or is it? Like, I guess cross that bridge when you get to it. But
Well, I mean, isn't that a nice problem to have?
yeah, I
You
guess.
get to a point and all of a sudden one of your videos shoot up in popularity.
Yeah, that's I guess that's the lesson. Just keep going. I mean, I've been wanting to sit down and do the next part of that live,
Yeah.
because that's part of documenting that's almost like a vlog, right? Hey, I'm learning this editing software. Might as well go on live and watch me go through the tutorial. Someone who knows, right?
Yeah.
But but I mean, that if no one watches, it doesn't matter, because it keeps my focus was better, because I'm sitting there literally looking at the camera and explaining to it and going, this doesn't make sense. Let's check this out.
Yeah.
How does this work? Oh, I know this. Oh, I learned something. That's exciting. And then if I'd not been on camera, I'd be going out and topping up my coffee every 5 minutes, right? But instead I sat there for an hour and a half. And so I think that's one of the great things about content creation. I saw Vanessa Lau did the same thing. She did a 2-day vlog of her workflow process and got to the end. She goes, I wouldn't have got this work done if I wasn't doing this recording at all. She goes, oh, same. So I think,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think part of this new economy is part of that. Like, kind of, it's a shame in a lot of the web development stuff where you've got lots of private IP. It's just, wouldn't it be great to just be able to like vlog your job? Which is kind of that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm like this. I love it. It's like, hey,
Yeah. Well,
know,
if you're a web developer and you want to live stream while you're writing code for your next micro
might as
SaaS
well.
like side hustle, other people have done that. I've
Yeah,
seen them do it. Like,
I think if you're thinking about it, you might as well just go and do it. What does it cost you? It doesn't cost you
yeah,
anything.
yeah. There are I forgot the name. There are some famous of like YouTube. Oh, no, sorry, no, Twitter famous um, developers that have side hustles that make 100,000 a month or something, and they kind of started off just by live streaming their work, and it's literally them with like, well, I can't do it with this camera, but just imagine my camera's down, and it's like them just
Oh, you just see their
with the
keyboard.
camera, like they are just literally just coding.
That's what Twitch is like, right? You just sit there for
Yeah.
hours until there's someone here. I've
Yeah,
never
yeah,
used
yeah.
Twitch.
Yeah.
I'm
And I
such a
thought maybe with my live streams I'm doing I'm preparing too much. Maybe I should just be more relaxed and just be like, okay, let's now build something. Whereas normally I don't like there to be dead air, but I have seen some
you got to.
some
I like what you do
programming.
with your live streams, but then
Well, yeah, I mean, but I have seen some developers that are just like programming things in like C# or something, and it's
yeah,
them like there's like a minute of silence, and it's just
I see. I'll get caught by
and they're just looking at the camera.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's like
it's a very vulnerable thing to do. I mean,
yeah,
oh God, I'm not going to use the D word, but I know sometimes I struggle, right? And I'd love to have an audience just to sit there. Well, I'd hate to have an audience to go, "What are you doing, you idiot?"
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
But I'm sure I've seen streams like that as well, where people are doing something and then they look at the comments and someone go, "Do this," and they go, "Oh, thanks," right? So someone in the comments has just gone, you can do that half an hour job in a second just by pressing this button. Oh, right. It's like pair programming with an audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Well, I just thought now, like, why couldn't I just allocate? Well, we can't do it these nights, of course, because we're recording. But every other night where I've got like 20 minutes free, I just stream it.
yeah, well, that's the
I'll
sort
be
of thing I'm
curious to
thinking
see
too.
what would happen just by getting content out there, getting your name out there. Because marketing, I've said it before, 80-90% of marketing is just reminding people you exist.
I think that's the word on the street in content is everybody's bored of all this flashing, and the platforms are changing, trying to get this repetitive, annoying, cheap, low quality content. Like people are over it. The fashion's wearing off, and so there's a lot of talk about authenticity. People want something interesting to watch. It's funny. I was watching things the other day about here on one hand, shorts killed YouTube, but on the other hand, people go that YouTube's getting more because people are getting bored of watching you're walking around at work, you're on the bus on the way home, you're watching your short form, and when you got home, you just want to put your phone away and be able to just sit back and eat dinner, right, and put your phone down and watch long form. So it's actually the short form content's making people consume more long form too. There's always these ironic things in the world, these paradoxes. And
absolutely.
let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
All right.
We're done.
Thanks for listening.
All right.
And
next time.
come in comments. Tell us what you want to hear about next week, because we've got so many ideas, but we want to know what you want to know so that we can talk to that. Interact with us. Come on the ride. We want to hear from you so we can see you in 2 weeks' time.
Cool.
Ciao.
All right. See you later.